Hey everybody, welcome back to Fake Nerds. I'm your host, Brian. This is a new type of video that I want to do just exclusively for the Fake Nerds channel, where I just kind of in a more laid back capacity cover an interesting piece of news and kind of talk about my general thoughts on what the news means specifically, and then for, you know, gaming, movies, television as a whole in a bigger sense. So very important to talk about the video game industry's movement. Almost, if you're a big company in video games, it almost seems exclusively they want to move to games as a service. So the latest example that we have of that is with Electronic Arts. They just had Dragon Age The Veilguard perform poorly, and it led to layoffs at the studio. BioWare that created it. Very unfortunate situation there, especially where BioWare is, one of the more well-known, well-respected studios in the industry. Obviously, they've been struggling a little bit the last few years with, of course, negative feedback for Anthem, for the new Mass Effect Andromeda game that they had, and now for Dragon Age The Veilguard. So it was long rumored, and I guess basically confirmed that Dragon Age The Veilguard initially was going to be a games as a service, which is radically different from any other Dragon Age game, which are very, intense RPG, role playing, heavy experiences. That is what the players of these games want and expect. And that is not what they were getting. You know, Fortunately, at some point, someone was like a voice of reason in the room, and they're like, our fans are not going to want a Dragon Age games as a service, live service game, right? So they made it a more traditional RPG, but they reused a lot of what went into it being a games as a service, and it kind of left like a clunky feel for the game. And a lot of people, didn't end up liking it that much. There was obviously the controversy of is it too woke? I don't really think that's something that, matters. You look at this week, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That was a game that the anti-woke warriors really rallied against, because there was one segment where you could role play a gay romance, and they were like, can't even have one segment like that. And it sold over 1 million copies, and it's a huge hit, and people seem to really like it. So failure there. I don't think Dragon Age The Veilguard failed because it was too woke. I think it failed because it was kind of a half measure between games as a service and the RPG experience that people want, and people seem to crave by, you know, example of Kingdom Come Deliverance being so popular this week. And even a game like Dragon's Dogma, which, I didn't hear a lot about the first game, but the second game was also very popular. It's a very deep RPG. That's what players seem to want. But because these companies are publicly traded, the best way to make money in the video game industry is games as a service. And that seems to be what EA CEO Andrew Wilson is taking away from it on an investor call. And I'm reading this off of Forbes website. Shout out Paul Tassi for that. Quote, this is Andrew Wilson. In order to break out beyond the core audience, games need to directly connect to the evolving demands of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper engagement alongside high-quality narratives in this beloved category. Dragon Age had a high-quality launch and was well-reviewed by critics, those who played. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive market. So they're essentially blaming the game for not being wide enough, and then not offering replayable segments in the same way that a game as a service does. And I think this is a potentially disastrous takeaway for Dragon Age. I think it failed because one, it took like 10 years to get a sequel out to this Dragon Age game. A lot of the players who were Dragon Age fans back in the day maybe don't have as much time to play Dragon Age these days. There are probably going to be people who buy it on a sale or, don't end up playing it at all just because they're not in their video game playing mindset at all. And then it comes out. There are people who are like, oh, it's not that good because of these clunky things that have to do with it. Okay, so now you're cutting off new fans. Do I think that if this was a Dragon Age live service game that would attract new fans? I guess if it was really good, but I think if you made a regular RPG that was really good, you'd have an even better chance, right, to get fans involved, to get people into a game like this. So, in my opinion, this is like a horrible, horrible takeaway. And, I am nervous that this is the only kind of takeaway that we're going to get anymore as the video game industry shrinks a little bit. Obviously, there was that big consumer report saying that the gaming industry kind of peaked and now it's like shrinking back down. And obviously, like COVID played a lot into that with people were at home more, playing more video games, and now they're not playing quite as many. But as like inflation goes up, as the market itself shrinks, as development times go way too crazy, I think we're going to see these situations where these bigger companies, these publicly traded companies, are going all in on these types of games as a service, live service, whatever you want to call them. And they're going to have to, I guess, make the best thing. The problem is like you can't play 5 live service games at a time. You can really only commit to like one. And I think most players pick one and stick with it. And then if they move on, example, they were an Overwatch player, now they're a Marvel Rivals player. They're not like looking for tons of different games of service, so that inherently shrinks the potential audience that you might have. So I think I understand from a perspective of games are very expensive to make. Games don't cost inflation wise as much as they used to. Proportion of, or I guess value of the dollar wise, video games were more expensive in the past. But I do think that if you try to jack up the prices to be more in line with what they were in the past, the market's not going to accept that. They're not going to happily pay 80, 90, $100 for a video game, especially where a lot of them come out half baked. And, games as a service almost use that as an excuse to come out with like, here's our minimum viable product and we're going to add on to it. And you should stay with us. You should buy it and you should stay and you should keep playing with us forever. And I just think that's a horrible idea. So very disappointing to hear Andrew Wilson take that away from things. I guess like if I'm being glib, maybe they'll make Madden a game as a service and I'll only have to pay for roster updates instead of new full price games. So that would not make sense either, right? They wouldn't do that for a game like Madden that consistently makes money. So yeah, don't love where the video game industry is going. I do understand it to a point, but I think it's the people in charge are also missing like the forest through the trees in terms of what is the reason for their games perhaps not performing how good they believe they should. So let me know your thoughts on all of this. Am I wrong? Should every game be a game as a service? I doubt it. Are you getting more into these single A, triple A experiences that are more embracing the old style of games? Do you expect that to continue? I personally think that we'll get a lot more double A games that are shorter but more, single player focused as these gaming budgets just completely spiral out of control. And by necessity, these big companies turn everything into a live service experience. So let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on the format for this show. And I will see you in the next one.